flavor. Some of them were fishy, kind of muddy tasting, and they didn't get a whole lot better once we did a second round with tomato sauce. So you're basically looking for the absence of off flavors when it comes to the flavor portion of it, which is, the reality is that pasta is the vehicle for the sauce, and you just don't want the pasta to get in the way. So the challenging thing here is that it is the protein that controls the swelling of the starches in regular Italian-style pasta. When you then switch to a lower protein flour, there isn't enough protein in the mix, and so you get an excess of starch swelling, and you end up with sticky, gummy, starchy, not very al dente pasta. The one brand that we liked had the highest protein and fiber content, and it's the protein and the fiber that are basically controlling the swelling of the starches so that you get a semi-decent texture.
So what do they use some special, you can't just use rice flour, you need to put other stuff in, right?
No. The brands are really using one or two flours. They're obviously adding water to the flour, and then they're drying them. And our winner actually uses the same technique that our favorite regular pasta uses, where it's a low temperature drying. So I have been talking while you have been sampling the noodles. They are quite different from each other. As you can see, none of them really look exactly like semolina pasta. They don't have that yellow tint. They're quite different. But what did you think of them?
That was awful. That was mealy. This was really springy and chewy. You could really chew on this. This one was pretty good. It wasn't as good as real spaghetti. Flavor was pretty good. It had some chew. It's not an A, but it's pretty good, so I would pick this one.
Let's see what you chose, Chris.
I don't know.
You agree with the tasting panel. This is the Jovial brown rice. It was the top choice. It was the only one that really got a recommendation from us.
And this one was very chewy.
So this is the Andean Dream. It was the runner-up. It's not mushy and gritty, which was the problem with most of the other samples, but we gave it a sort of recommended with reservations.
And this one, no.
That was the last place, the bowls. That was representative, frankly, of many of the other samples of just being mushy, gritty, mealy. All the bad words you can think of about pasta applied to most of the brands we tasted, including that one.
Sorry, guys. So if you're gluten-free and you want to eat spaghetti, it's not the end of the world. We've actually come up with a winner, which isn't bad at all, which is the Jovial gluten-free brown rice pasta. I have to say that when I do more gluten-free baking, it's a lot like Alice in Wonderland. Just when you think you got it figured out, like the Cheshire Cat appears and everything's upside down. So here's what I did. I made Toll House cookie recipe. I switched out our gluten-free flour blend, thinking that would solve the problem. And guess what? This obviously was not a good outcome.
No. Well, it's spread like crazy because, there's no gluten in a gluten-free flour blend.
So we need structure.
Let me show you how easy it is to make a gluten-free chocolate chip cookie. And we're looking for one with great chewy texture, but also a nice toffee flavor. We're not going to compromise quality or taste. So this is our flour blend. This is 8 ounces. And we're going to add a teaspoon of baking soda. And that sounds like quite a bit. It's actually slightly over leavened. So what's going to happen is the cookies are going to rise and then they're going to collapse and get that really nice craggy top that we like in our chocolate chip cookies. This is a half a teaspoon of salt, and here's our structure. This is xanthan gum. Now this is 3/4 teaspoons. It's not a lot, but this is really going to mimic the gluten that we've lost by making a gluten-free flour blend. All right, so on to our wet ingredients. Now we've got butter here. This is 8 tablespoons. And this is a reduction in the classic Toll House cookie recipe, which is 12 tablespoons, sometimes more depending on who's making the cookie. And what we found was gluten-free flour blends do not absorb fat very well. And we ended up with cookies that were very, very greasy. So we reduced the fat. It's the only time in my life I'm going to say that. We reduced the fat in our cookie and had better results.
Hope everyone DVRs this episode so they can play it over and over again.
And we're going to add in our sugar. This is 5 1/4 ounces of brown sugar and 2 1/3 ounces of granulated. And we'll whisk this together. And together the granulated sugar and the brown sugar are going to give this that nice toffee flavor. All right. So next up, we have 1 egg, again for more structure, and a good tablespoon of vanilla. Even though gluten-free flour blends do not absorb fat very well, they do absorb liquid. They're slow at doing it, but they absorb it very well. So we're going to add 2 tablespoons of just regular whole milk. And that's going to give us a looser batter to begin with, but it's going to bake up into a nice moist cookie. All right, so that is that. Now we'll just add in our dry ingredients here. And we don't have to worry about gluten formation over stirring, so we can really stir it until it's well blended. And you can see this dough looks a little strange. It actually looks a bit more fluid than a regular cookie dough. And again, that's by design. We have more moisture going in here with the milk, but later on this is going to set up just perfect. So last ingredient wouldn't be a chocolate chip cookie without chocolate chips. This is 7.5 ounces of chocolate chips. You definitely want to check the package because not all chocolate chips are produced in a factory that are gluten-free. So you want to make sure, if you're looking for a gluten-free diet, to check the package. All right, just mix this. The last thing we want to do here, cover this with some plastic, and we're going to let this sit here on the counter for about 30 minutes. And that flour blend is going to absorb that extra moisture. But the other thing that's going to happen is the sugar is going to start to dissolve, and that's a really good thing. Eventually, when we shape the cookies, put them in the oven, the sugar is going to caramelize sooner, so we get more of that toffee flavor.
I'm excited to see the outcome.
I know. You will not believe these are gluten-free cookies. All right, Chris, it's been a half an hour. Why don't you check out this dough? It has changed. It's not quite as,
I'll check it out.
as loose, yeah?
Now, this is worth about 500 emails.
Really?
But it was worth every bite.
Oh, come on.
Oh, we're going to bake them, be fine.
That's right.
No.
All right, so now we want to shape these into cookies. I've got 2 soup spoons, and we'll work with about 1.5 tablespoons of dough at a time, just eyeballing it. We're going to space these about 2 inches apart on our sheet pan. I'll fit 12 per sheet, and these sheets have been lined with parchment paper. Okay, there we go. This bakes 24 cookies, just about. We're going to bake these 1 sheet at a time on a 350-degree oven. And these will bake for about 11 to 14 minutes. Of course, I'll rotate the pan halfway through baking. So I'll go ahead and put these in the oven, and then after that I'm going to go ahead and shape 12 more and bake those exactly the same way.
Got it.
These look very different from the ones you brought out earlier.
This shows how much you love me. You made 24 chocolate chip cookies,
That's
all
right.
for me.
That's right, and they've got some really nice color. They're set around the edge, but they're still a little soft right in the center, and that's perfect. You definitely don't want to overcook
Just like
these.
you. Hard around the edges, a little soft in the center.
Yes, exactly. So we want to let these sit for 5 minutes here on the sheet pan, and then after that we transfer them directly to the cooling rack to cool down, and you can eat them warm. So go for it.
A few months ago, we were developing this recipe. Jack Bishop, our intrepid tasting expert, had a bunch of these left in his office, and he thought they were regular chocolate chip cookies. He took a bite, said, these are really good. He didn't know they were gluten-free.
No idea.
So now I'm going to go through the same process.
Yeah, you tell me.
The texture is really the same as a regular chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah, it's got that nice, almost caramel chew to the very center, that toffee flavor. And there's none of that graininess that you often get with the gluten-free flour blends.
And
And another thing, I'm going to eat more.
so the secret to a great chocolate chip cookie, and this happens to be gluten-free, is to start with a slightly odd ingredient, xanthan gum, that provides some structure. We use a little bit less fat, a little bit of extra liquid actually. Finally let the batter sit for about half an hour. So from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, this is a big surprise. A fabulous chocolate chip cookie, but it's actually gluten-free. Great job.
It's not gluten-free. I'm going to eat all of these.